Well, my best hope is that I inspire in everyone this evening this idea that people are complicated, relationships are not. That actually relationships can be quite simple. We just really complicate them. So that's what I'm sharing with you this evening. So let me just give a slightly bigger picture to start. So my formal training is in applied psychology and as a counselor, and I started in 2006 my counseling practice. And what happened was I was exposed through my counseling training to the coaching approach. And the coaching, if I can just say the biggest difference between the two, if you think about counseling, counseling has counseling, psychology, psychiatry, all of those have their roots in medicine, and they're looking at pathology and what's wrong with people. So the conversations that you have tend to be about the problem in the past, and you would ask the question, so what problem brings you here today? And then people start talking about their problems. And when I was exposed to the coaching approach, it was a very different kind of conversation. So the conversation was very solution and future focused. And what we would ask people is so imagine your life without this. What would that look like? And if you had this life, what would you be doing then that you're not doing now? And so I decided to transition into coaching, and I got my coaching qualification in 2010. And so my work evolved from couple counseling to relationship coaching. And it is vastly different because I will never be asking about the problem, which seems counterintuitive for many people. They don't quite know how does that work, that you don't ask about the problem. But essentially what it is that you help couples to figure out what do they need to become an A team? What do they need to become an awesome partnership where they're working together? And they define what that looks like. And then I say to them, now, what do you each need to be doing differently in order to create that? And then individuals take ownership themselves of what needs to be done differently. So that was quite significant. So what happened was, as a result of doing this relationship coaching, I realized when I was working with couples that first of all, there's some fundamental themes that were present that tend to show up regularly. And the other thing was that I thought to myself, well, it sort of seems to me that a lot of this we could avoid, problems in relationship, we could avoid if when we were single, we took care to prepare ourselves properly for relationships. And so I started this process back in 2011 called Dating Deliberately. And what Dating Deliberately was or is a process that I offer to single people. And it's a relationship coaching for singles. And what it is, it's about understanding what are my patterns, what are the themes, where am I going wrong, where am I falling short in relationships? And so it's a process, it's usually about 6 sessions, and I worked backwards. So if I'm working with couples and couples that are making it work and really getting it right, what would you need to be aware of or mindful of? What structures or information would it be helpful to know as a single person? And so that was how that sort of evolved, the Dating Deliberately process. And then I thought, well, now let's take it another step further. So what about couples, premarital couples that come in? And, you know, when you are premarital and pre-committed, you know, no one thinks for a moment that their relationship is not going to work. No one goes into a marriage suspecting for a moment that theirs isn't going to work. So, you know, so again, it was a case of while people are in that high excitement state to take the opportunity to say, while you are excited and do believe, and the cynicism and perhaps the, you know, just letting someone in, hold on a second. So while someone is, while the couple are still excited and things are going really well, this is a great time to share information and knowledge. So the premarital process is what I developed a process and a method, which is largely what some of the things I'll be sharing with you today, which is called people pairing, or preparing for pairing and people pairing. And then I have, of course, my couple work that I do with the couples in conflict, the couple coaching and the relationship coaching. And then sometimes I will be working with couples who have reached the end of their relationship, and I invite people to do what I call conscious uncoupling, which is to look at how have we grown as a result of the relationship, so that it can end amicably with respect and honoring the time that we've been together and shared, versus ending the relationship really feeling resentful and angry, and to bring full closure. So that's sort of the scope of the work that I do in intimate relationships. And I feel like I'm ready to go into sharing with you now. Let me just say that what I will do is I will probably, after each section, Lily, I'm going to ask you if there's any questions as we go. Is there anything that isn't clear? If there is anything that isn't clear, please let me know. I'm happy to slow down. If I'm going too slow, speed up, you're welcome to share. And then at the very end, we will open the floor for questions. Anyone who's interested is welcome to ask questions. So I'm going to move across into the screen sharing now.
Well, before you carry on, Shelley, I just want to say that it sounds like you've had quite a journey up until now, and that you've really thought through and worked your way through quite a couple of different phases yourself, developing to this place where you're doing the work that you're doing, which is wonderful to just hear about.
And also to add to that, what I'd like to add, thank you for reminding me, Lily, just to say that I'm married now for 15 years. And so a lot of this stuff, I literally have been the guinea pig myself, and my husband has been the guinea pig. He's been on the receiving end of this, because I really believe in this idea of learn it, live it, give it.
Oh yeah, that's very powerful.
Okay, so I had to, it's one thing to have this theory in your head, but like I really have to apply it. Like, does this stuff that I'm teaching actually work? So yes. and using these ideas and evolving them. So it hasn't only been in a professional capacity, it's actually in a personal capacity as well that I have, that this has evolved.
Well, that's very powerful. Taking years of experience, condensing that into something that's meaningful, applying it in your own life, which is something that a lot of people struggle with actually. So that it's not just theory, but you've lived it. And so you've integrated it deeply, is extremely meaningful when shared. So we're really looking forward to this workshop tonight.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to move across and you'll let me know if you are able to see this.
There we go.
Can you see it?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Let's see if I move there. And how about that?
That's great.
Still?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. All right. So, so as you can see here, this is just what I've got here at this little arrow here is, let me see why, there we go. So this is just touching on what I shared with you earlier. Can you see, Lily, the different, that arrow, that's the sort of spectrum that I was referring to, is that I address people, it's a bit like a highway. You can enter onto the highway at any point,
Yes.
So you can come in at the singles intersection, or you could already be premarital and join in, or at the couples section and couples that are in conflict, or at the end of your relationship. So there's a full range of this area in intimate relationships that I work.
Well, hopefully, when we do enter at the singles, we don't end up for disconnected couples at the end.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to go through all phases of those.
Okay, great. I think we'll just stop at the couples conflict then.
Yeah. And that you once you've done this successfully, this part, you won't need to come back.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
let's just do the dating deliberately, Shelley, and then we go into a wonderful relationship, and we don't have to go all the way through.
Exactly. So the idea that I'm sharing with you today is this. So the title is "People Are Complicated, Relationships Are Not." And why that title is specifically relevant for me is that it's a book that I've been writing, a book that's living inside me at the moment that hasn't been birthed yet. So in 2020, I had the opportunity to put the structure together, and I've written 4 chapters. And although the most of the structure is there, I'm sharing with you probably the first 4 chapters, so you must know how much content there is in this.
Sure.
Okay. So
well done for condensing it then.
Yeah, thank you. That's probably the biggest part, is just to formulate the ideas and have them in a structure. Okay, so it's really a method for understanding and navigating the territory of love. So we'll explore a little bit about this idea of this territory, and part 1 of the book is about the relationship piece, which is what I'm going to share with you today. And the part 2 is the individuals, okay? So the relationship piece, the way that I talk about this is that it's a landscape, okay? So we've got this landscape, and there's 3 different territories. But we're focusing on the one territory today, which is called love, and I'll show you the other territories as well. But the territory of love is when 1 + 1 = 3. So what that is we've got an image here of a Vesica Pisces, and the Vesica Pisces is a sacred geometric symbol for unity. So it's 2 circles that overlap equally. So there's a me, which is 1 person. There's a you, which is 1 person. And then the space where they overlap, this 3rd entity is created, known as the relationship. So that is its own entity. It has its own life. It has its own relation. It has its own journey. So you have an individual personal development journey as individuals, but the relationship also has its own evolution and its own journey as it evolves into a, blossoming from something very new in the beginning, and as it evolves over time.
Yes.
So the territories, the different territories, okay, it seems to be delaying. I've pressed next and nothing's happening. Really?
Oh my goodness. I'm so glad it's not just me that happens to.
Okay, so let's
That's
see.
Fine.
There we go. Oh, I see what's happened
there
here.
We go.
Okay, all right. So these are all the territories. Okay. So there's 3 categories of relationships. So the first category, and some of these words are words that already exist out there. So these are the 3 categories. So the first category is where you've got your 2 circles that are quite far apart. The first one is known as the interdependent relationship, which is the territory of love. Okay.
Yes.
The second, where the 2 circles overlap over each other, is where the me and the you are so overlapped that actually I'm not sure where I start and where you end. Okay, so the first one, as I said, is the territory of love, and it's based on equality and mutual respect. So some people call it interdependent relationship, and it's sometimes described as a secure attachment style. People that are familiar with those kinds of words, okay? A codependent relationship is the territory of enmeshment. So it's based on power and control, sometimes described as an anxious attachment style, okay? And then the last one is the territory of avoidance, which is based on indifference. It's almost like I couldn't care less, whatever, you know, I dip into the relationship for some intimacy when I'm ready and when I feel like it, and then I step back out again. So that's what's known as an avoidant attachment style, also known as an independent relationship. And so what you can have a relationship where one person is independent and one is, say, codependent, or where one is anxious and one is avoidant, which creates, you know, you've got one who's indifferent and one who's trying to pull them in and lure them in. So it can create a lot of tension. So if we think about the evolution of us as individuals, I want you to think about how you start. When you're born, you are dependent, okay? So you are born a dependent, and you are dependent on your parent, okay? So the dependency is not necessarily that your parent is codependent on you, but you are a dependent. You depend on your parents, and your mindset is you take care of me, okay? That's my understanding in the relationship, is that it's you taking care of me. Now, what's supposed to happen is that as you become a teenager and you mature, you swing to the exact opposite. So if you think about what happens as a teenager, you push back. You don't want to be enmeshed with your parent anymore, and you want to become independent and self-reliant.
Is that what happened, Shelley? Now you tell me. Now I understand my children.
So they really don't want anything to do with you at a certain point. And that's them establishing their own sense of self. And they want that independence. And the idea is, I am self-reliant. I don't need you, which is completely opposite. So, which is very different to this first one, which is I need you because you need to take care of me.
Yeah.
And in this one, it's I am self-reliant. So I don't need you, which is why it's sometimes described as avoidant, because I avoid you when I'm ready and when I feel like it, then I will move in. You know, we move in, not literally as in with you, but I will step closer.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. And then so this is part of our development, is that we start dependent, then we become independent, and then what is supposed to happen is that we then become interdependent. So interdependent is that I recognize that we collaborate together to create something better. So it's this idea that I don't need you, but I want you. I want to be in a relationship with you because I understand that 1 + 1 = 3, that we are better together. When we collaborate, when you bring your set of strengths and I bring my set of strengths, and we work as a partnership, we can achieve more together than we can ever alone.
That makes a lot of sense.
Okay, but it doesn't come from a place of neediness. So it's not driven by need.
Yeah.
Okay, so this continuum actually comes from Stephen Covey. If you've ever read or heard of the Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about this maturity continuum, that we all start out dependent. You don't go from being dependent to interdependent. It's almost like and I'll give you an example of some real life examples with where I find cultures that get stuck with this. So in some cultures, the woman, for example, will stay home as a dependent on her family until she meets her husband, and then she moves straight in with her husband. Okay. So what happens is, in that culture, the husband becomes the surrogate father. So the father, the husband takes over the role of the father, which is, you take care of me. It's very traditional. It's quite a traditional relationship. And you could even have it in reverse. So for example, in some Mediterranean cultures, the men look to their mamas to take care of them, and then they just get the wife, which replaces the mama, and it's like, you're here to take care of me, you know, you're here to replace my mother who looks after me. So if you find that you have in a relationship where with this expectation of someone who's going to look after you, whether you're perhaps male who thinks, well, the role of the woman is to look after me, to feed me, to clean, to take care of the house, you know, that's you're looking for a mother then, not a partner. And the same as if you're a woman looking for a man to provide and to take care of you, you're looking for a father, not a partner. So what happens is that when we don't go through that development of personal independence, where you look after yourself, where you cook for yourself, you go shopping for yourself, where you take care of yourself, you manage your diary. And if you don't go through that experience of living independently, it's very easy to slip into this type of relationship where someone just becomes a surrogate type of parent for you, because you haven't had that. It's a development path. Does that make sense?
So is the antidote for people, I mean, if I notice now that I'm someone that easily slip into codependent relationships, is the medicine then the antidote for that I actually need some time on my own and not just step right back into the next codependent relationship? Is
Absolutely.
that correct?
I think definitely I would explore, I would spend time on my own, building your relationship with yourself, your own self-reliance, your own, you know, becoming your own best friend, where you are comfortable and safe with your own company, where you can enjoy being on your own and not needing another person to entertain you or to make you feel happy. So that it's like, find the joy within, find your center within. Everything needs to come from within you. And when you feel like, I talk about relationship readiness. So the irony is, you are ready for a relationship when you don't need one.
Oh, isn't that true? So, I mean, I just think back, you know, when I was very anxious in every way. But how difficult it was to be on my own and to make peace with the fact that I needed to be on my own. It was actually painful and it felt wrong. So you actually need to be aware that the fact that you are uncomfortable doesn't mean that it's not right for you. Absolutely. Because you feel like what you need is just another relationship. You know, you just need that
to find the right one. You just need to find the right one, and then it'll be fine.
That's right. So to go against that, to make the decision to say, no, that's not actually what you need. I know that's what you feel like, but that's not actually helpful right now. And to make peace with the discomfort. Yeah.
And that's your personal development journey. And so when you don't need someone, that's when you're most ready. But then on the opposite side, which is this type of relationship, the independent relationship, if you then become so fiercely independent, okay, you might be at that point where you don't need a relationship, but if the volume of that is turned up so high that I don't need a relationship, but there isn't that strong desire for partnership, that you can become this can become a bit self-absorbed, you can become a little bit all about me in this place. So you want to be able to not have to be mindful that you can also get stuck over here where you keep people at arm's length and sort of avoid intimacy and tap in only when you feel like it. Okay, all right. So I'm going to give you another visual here, just for you to get a sense of these three. So this codependent relationship, I talk about, it's based on power and control. Okay, so what happens is in this type of relationship, if a couple presents to me and they have power struggles, okay, and power struggles define their relationship, then it's obvious to me then that this is the dynamic that we're working with. And what we need is to separate the circles instead of bring the circles together. So what I mean by that is, when this is the dynamic in a relationship, at any one time, one person will feel like they have the power, okay? So if they feel like they have the power, they're on the pedestal, they're the one who gets to make the decisions here, they behave in a very careless way. The person who's in the pit behaves in a very careful way. They're walking on eggshells all the time because they don't want to upset that person, they don't want to, if the person who's in the pit, who I need you, I depend on you because you take care of me. So I can't upset my person who's on the pedestal. I don't want to upset that person on the pedestal because so I'm going to be full of care about how I talk and what I say and what I do. And the person who's on the pedestal couldn't care less. They literally couldn't care less because they have the power. And you could even use this in an extreme example that it can flip-flop. So for example, if in an abusive relationship, for example, if someone has the power, they intimidate through, it could be through physical, it could be through verbal abuse, physical abuse, it could be through financial abuse, holding back money, whatever it is, they hold the power, the purse strings. And then this, at some point, or they might even have an affair, for example, because they feel like, oh, well, I can do what I like. She's not going anywhere or he's not going anywhere, because they feel like they are they're full of the power. And then there's this huge row, this huge blowout, and this person threatens to leave and calls the police, and then suddenly they swap over. So then the person who's in the pit is then on the pedestal, and then they have the power. Then they start delivering punishment. Okay, because you did this, I'm going to do that. And they start, so there's this flip-flopping that happens over who has the power and the control, and it just keeps sort of alternating. And it can be extreme versions or subtle versions.
Okay, Shelley, I've got a question there.
Yeah.
Can you also find that in this combination, you almost have the person that is avoidant, sort of has the power here, and the person that is anxious, always needing to connect and needing intimacy and needing, so because it's not always that two people who are anxious or codependent come together and two people.
Exactly. No, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. So
I want to say it also turns around if you now look at the dynamics, and power could be in the form of, oh, you've abused me, and now the person feels guilty, and now I have the power, and the more, I cry about it, and the more I'm bruised and I feel sorry for myself, the more you have to sort of feel bad about what you did, but then I have the power.
Correct.
And I'm almost
Exactly.
manipulating you
Yes,
through what
absolutely.
you've done. And
Yes.
you've also got that dynamic. So it plays out in a whole array of different ways, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so then what we've got on the other side is we've got the opposite, is we've got two fiercely independent people that are fairly indifferent. So in a way, it's like these two avoidants, you know. So in this example, I'm living my life. I'm doing what I want. I have my life, my terms, my conditions. Oh, well, that's cool because I'm living my life. And you got two people that just do whatever they want. And they have these brief moments where they connect, you know, in this us space. And it's usually when it's convenient for us. And the sad thing for the children of these kinds of families, so the sad thing for these kinds of families is that you see two parents who really don't have necessarily a deep connection with each other, you know, what happens is they then grow up thinking that's what marriage is one person living their life, and, you know, a couple of times of the year possibly they connect and they share holidays together or something like that. But it's not, so it can be quite extremes. There's versions of extremes to this. But the main idea is that what is underneath is the indifference. It's more like that's how you would determine what's going on here, is the I couldn't care less, because you've got two here that couldn't care less, basically.
Could it also play out in the way that, you know, we live under one roof, but we are almost like flatmates, you know, we don't touch each other, we don't spend time together. You've got your function, I've got mine. Mine is to, you know, fetch and drop the kids. Yours is to provide. What time you come home is not of my importance. You'll find your food in the microwave, but it's made, you know.
Yes.
So
yeah.
It's not only when we have separate holidays, that kind of an indifference, but it's also like two flatmates living together, you know.
Absolutely.
There's an understanding.
Yes, exactly. It's like a business arrangement almost.
Yes.
So it's easier and more convenient for us to have a shared home, and, you know, but there's really no partnership or intimacy between us.
Is it also true that sometimes when it's relationships like this is where there's been an emotional divorce, but not a physical divorce yet?
Yes, exactly. And I find that for people that do eventually get divorced, for many of them, they emotionally divorced their partner sometimes for years before they actually got divorced. You know, there was that disconnect already long before the actual papers were signed.
Yeah.
Okay. And now in the interdependent relationship, whoops, where is my other people? Come join us, please. Where you see, where are they?
You're doing well. You're doing well, Shelley.
But my other people haven't arrived. So I think that what happens with Zoom is the little images.
I understand.
They sometimes when you click it, it doesn't. Okay, so I'll tell you. I'm basically I don't know why it's not going. It's sort of frozen for a little bit.
That's fine.
Okay, so it seems not want to join. So what the image is two people standing next to each other, and the word is caring. So it's based on mutual and positive regard. Okay, so in a relationship like this, you recognize that I am your equal and opposite. And that
can I ask, sorry, Shelley, Joy, could you maybe just mute yourself, please? Otherwise, every time you move about, then you just pop up on the screen. Thank you so much. Thanks, Shelley.
Okay, no problem. So it's based on equality and positive yeah, it's based on equality and mutual positive regard. So I recognize you to be my equal. I don't put you on a pedestal. You know, I see you as my equivalent. Okay,
that
so
makes sense.
So and that's the territory of love. Okay, so it's probably going to jump to the next slide. For some reason.
Shelley, so if we look at codependent, it's that careful. And if you look at
Correct.
independent, it's the careless. And then the interdependent is that caring, loving. And it's actually the only one of the three that is actually loving, that hasn't got anything to do with love.
Well, exactly. So that's why I call them territories. So because the landscape is vast, but within the landscape, you get a territory of attachment, okay? And attachment is based on power and control, and it's codependent, and it's careful and careless. And this is also attachment, but it's a different type of attachment. It's avoidant attachment. So that attachment is different. It's so this where this is enmeshment, and this is indifference and, you know, separation. This one in the center here is the territory of love, is where the two circles are equally overlapping. And I see my partner as my equal, and there's positive regard that I go into the relationship. Number one, recognizing that us together, that the purpose of our union is to challenge, encourage, and inspire each other to become the best versions of ourselves. That through the vehicle of relationship, we become better people. It's not so that I can get what I want and you know, this whole manipulation thing. It's that we see that through the vehicle, that it has there's a spiritual purpose, a spiritual side to this. And that we become better people as a result of our union.
Yeah, it enables me to be more of what I'm supposed to be in this world. That's beautiful.
Exactly. And so I would say the clue is, if you can't be yourself, if you are unable to be who you are and to be yourself, and you have to pretend to be someone else in order to make the relationship work, then you're not a good match.
You're saying very powerful words tonight, Shelley. And I think all of us are sort of reflecting on different relationships we've had with different people in our lives, be it friendships or be it with a parent or be it an intimate partner. And yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Okay, great. Okay, so it is jumping to the next slide. So I talk about love is not a noun, it's an emergence. Okay, so it's a verb. It's more a verb than it is a noun. So people talk about love as this thing that's out there that they sort of need to find. And I talk about it being an emergence. It's something that emerges as a result of something. And that something is, there's this art, science, and practice of these three domains. So I'll say a little bit more about that. Okay, so in the space of the relationship, there are three domains that will either enable a relationship to work and to flourish, or disable it. Okay, and so
is this like a greenhouse of love? You know, if you had to create a greenhouse where love could flourish, like a plant or a tree, then this would be it.
Well, actually, yes and no, and because I have the second part of this presentation, which I'm not sharing tonight, is the climate of love. So. Okay. So the climate of love, which is that is that, you know, you can have rain on a summer's day, all right? So, but just because it's raining, just because you're having a bad period of time in your relationship, or it could even rain for a week, you know, that doesn't mean the relationship is terrible. It's like, you know, what you're looking for is to create a climate where it can flourish. So there are certain things that allow that climate to flourish. To me, these are almost essential pieces. This is more significant than the climate. It's almost like these are the essential pieces for the territory. If we're talking about, you know, those 3 territories, the enmeshment territory and the independent versus the territory of love. So, okay, so I'm just going to share what they are, and then I'm going to go into greater detail, but these are the 3 domains, okay? So, and now you see my it's not coming up, this 3rd one. Okay, well, I'm just going to tell you what it is.
Thank you, Shelley, that's perfect.
So the 3rd one is intimacy. Okay, so I'm going to take you through each of them separately, just so that you have an idea. Okay, so there's a me, a you, and an us. One me, one you, which creates this 3rd entity, which is the us. Okay, so you get that idea. So what happens is there are certain things that need to be present within the me's, within the me and the you, that will then show up in the us space. Okay, so for example, and now there we go. In order for compatibility to show up between us, all right, the 2 individuals really need to understand themselves and their deal breakers. Okay, so I'm going to say a little bit more about that. Okay, so this as an individual. So as an individual, I'm looking to pair myself with another person. So let's say I'm single, right? I'm looking to pair myself with another person. Now, if you think about the pairing of anything, so I use this analogy of pairing food and wine. Now, pairing food and wine is a science. It's a science that has come as a result of years and years and years of people putting different things together and trialing different combinations and saying, actually, when you put this element with this element, the 2 elements actually create something better. They add, they enhance, the flavors burst and explode beautifully when those 2 come together, those 2 things, elements come together. And if it's incompatible pairing, then it takes away, it draws away from the element, the original element. So for example, let's say we're talking about, an incompatible pairing food-wise. If you think about, let's just say food would be, say, fish and bananas. I mean, you just don't put fish and bananas. They're not necessarily going to combine well and contribute well to each other. There are some flavors like ice cream, which are very palatable, which can go with most things. So when you know what your flavor is, so if, for example, you are the ice cream type of person, which is very easygoing, very palatable, can go anywhere, go with anyone, then it's quite difficult because you can put ice cream with anything, but there are certain things you cannot put ice cream with, like you wouldn't put ice cream with meat, for example. So it's almost like, unless it's very obvious, if someone has a very easygoing kind of personality, you can kind of put them with anyone, right? And then you get some people that are flavors that are almost more pungent. So if you're a chili kind of a flavor, that person dominates. It's like no matter what you put chili with, you taste the chili, okay?
Yeah.
Or a garlic or something like that. And then you get some things which are difficult to pair, say, you know, like blue cheese. Blue cheese has got quite a unique flavor and a unique texture. You know, you've really got to be careful about what you try and pair it with. So the idea with matching yourself with someone well is to figure out, what is my flavor, okay? Who, when combined with me, brings out my best self, Okay. So who can I be my best self with? Because if you're a very easygoing kind of personality, you could probably match yourself with many people, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're a good match. So what you need to figure out is your deal breakers. So you need to decide, what are the things, first of all, what do I want for myself in my life? What kind of life do I want to live? What kind of relationship do I want to have? You know, if say, for example, I know about myself, well, what I'd really love is to be able to travel around the world. I don't want to have children. I want to travel around the world, and I want to go do a yoga retreat when I can. I want to, you know, and fill my life with adventure. Let's say you have an unusual job, for example, where you work as a cameraman and you fly around the world filming whales. Okay, so you need to figure out, what kind of person do I need to be with so that I can do that without, and do it well and flourish in that, someone who will support that. So I would need to, if I was this adventurer person, I would need to find someone who's equally adventurous, who's equally open to travel. I would need to find someone who's pretty spontaneous, you know. I would need to find someone who perhaps also is choosing not to have children. So you need to know, what are the things, that's what you know yourself, and what are your deal breakers, so that you will know, I am not going to be a good match with that person. As lovely as they are, we will not combine well with each other. So I will share a personal example, Lily, just because I think it makes it easier. And
yes.
how, with anonymity with people, you know, as well. So when I came from a background where alcohol was abused, and I remember whenever I went on a date and people were drinking, I would turn into this fishwife of note. Okay, so I would be monitoring. I'd become the drinks monitor. How many of you had? You know, I think you've had 2 now. You don't need another one. You know, when are you going to stop drinking? No, we're not going to watch the rugby because they're going to be drinking all afternoon, and we're not going to sit there and be drinking all afternoon. So
really, Shelley, I can't imagine that.
Thanks. So no, really horrible. So I got told, Shelley, you need to see a psychologist and sort yourself out, because this is just unacceptable. Okay. And they said, it's your issue. You need to sort this out, because you know what? People drink. And so you are not going to be able to find anybody if you're going to behave in this way. So after some like deep reflection, I thought, you know what? Actually, I must just find someone who also doesn't want to drink. Problem solved.
Yeah, so, that makes sense. So why do you want to change if it's a big part of their life, and for whatever reason it fulfills you know, a certain function for them? Let's say, for instance, someone is extremely sociable, and part of being, you know, in their social circles is that, you know, drink is part of what they do. Then you know, it's a case of saying, well, I truly accept that, and there's nothing about that I'd like to change. But that means then that you know, it's
you and
just
I are not a good match.
Exactly.
Correct.
So
it's almost trying to manipulate. Exactly. I'm not trying to manipulate the person to stop drinking. I recognize that 99% of people on this planet drink alcohol. I'm just not one of them. So I need to find someone who also, and let's say I'm not so extreme. I mean, I don't have a problem with having a toast and whatever, but I know the trigger for me is people that are out of control, of when you've had 2, after 2, and you start, you know, your eyes start closing a little bit and getting a bit glazed, then it becomes like an excuse for what I said, what I did, why I behaved badly, and then that's it. Everything just gets thrown as the excuse. So for me, I realized, so that's what I needed to find, is someone who doesn't drink, but who really prioritizes their health and well-being, and being you know, that can enjoy the occasional drink, but it isn't part of their lifestyle. Let's put it that way.
Well, you know, when I listen to you, what comes up for me is that on a scale, when it comes to drink and me, I weigh more. And I am more important than your next drink. So you will always take that into consideration.
Yes.
And if I feel like I'm more important to you than your alcohol, then I feel safe.
Exactly. That's a great way of putting it. And the way that I would describe it is that you really need to figure out what makes you tick and what is heavily weighted for you. You know, what really matters. So someone who has a career filming whales and traveling around the world cannot be involved with someone who needs to know where they are, what they're doing, who wants the surveillance of who you're with, you're alone, is there a girl there, what time will you be back, when are you going to call me? I mean, you have to have a sense of the kind of person that you need to be with, or the kind of relationship that you want to have. And based on who you are and the kind of relationship you want to have, who is most likely to be a good fit? And you put together this list. So this list is this list of between, you know, so deal makers and deal breakers. A deal breaker is, I could fall in love with someone, but if suddenly drink is a problem, or if drinking is now an issue to contend with, I know I would walk away, because I have been super clear about what my non-negotiables are. And everyone needs to figure out what their non-negotiables are, because at the end of the day, you are negotiating a lifetime together. You are going to negotiate a partnership, a lifetime partnership with someone. So you cannot go into any negotiation and have no non-negotiables. You cannot. And if you do, well, then what will happen is you will find out what those non-negotiables are when you're already committed, and then that becomes a problem.
True. That's very true.
Okay, so and that is why the piece is about compatibility. So if you think about it, when a couple comes to see me, I'm trying to understand, is this a compatibility issue? Is it a partnership issue, or is it an intimacy issue? It will show up in the relationship as one of those three things, which means that that I will then know. So we'll go to the next slide. Then, oh, here we go. So if it shows up as a partnership, so if it's a partnership issue, okay, then there's a problem with the individual's partnering ability. So, I'm actually going to just jump through. So, all right, let me expand on this. I realize that I've got separate slides with each of these, but it's fine. I'm just going to keep this stuck on this one for now. Okay, so let me talk about partnership. Okay, so the analogy that I'd like to share with you. So Lily, did you play any sport at school? Any team sport?
Yeah, I loved it. Yes. Played netball.
Okay.
Loved it.
Oh, great. Okay. And was this team that you were in, were you by any chance in the A team, B or C? Which team did you play with?
I played A team.
Okay.
Worked very hard.
Okay. So let me ask you this. So think of a relationship as a partnership. Okay. So it's an A team. Most people want to be in an A team kind of a partnership. Okay. So if you're in an A team partnership, your A team, you have A team players, right? So what was the difference between an A team player and say a D team player?
The A team players were willing to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and eat, sleep, and drink the game. That's what it took, a huge amount of commitment. Where the cast in Weinspan, they it's the name just says what it is, cast and vain, and they cast and vain more than they actually play sport or practice their sport. So they basically get together, and it's more of a social event than it is really a commitment towards the game. Yeah,
exactly. Okay, so an A-team partnership is that you have two A-team players that are committed to the partnership. Okay, so an A-team player, if you were to be on an A-team and you've got and you've trained and you've got the skills and you've got the techniques and you've practiced and you've learned and you've got all these things to become a great A-team player, and then this D-team player arrives who's a bit slapgat, doesn't really care much, and when you throw the ball, doesn't catch it, misses it, oh, well, whatever, doesn't really matter. How frustrating would that be for you as an A-team player who's committed and invested to this game, to this team, to be with a player who's couldn't care less, who's disinterested? What would that feel like?
Oh, that, it never happens because there's just no match. The moment that there's this disinterest, then there's,
then
it just doesn't work.
Exactly.
Yeah, and immediately someone walks away and say, well, if you're not serious about it, then I'm going to go and play with someone else who is. Or the D-team player says, oh, you're so full of it, just relax. And I'm going to go and play with someone that doesn't take things so seriously. Really.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's not a good match.
Okay, great. So an A-team, when I'm referring to an A-team player, so that your ability is around your skill. There are certain relationship skills that will make a partnership work. So quality communication, for example. If you have no ability to communicate effectively, to express yourself, to express your needs, what you think, what you feel, asking for what you want, making effective requests, if you do not have any communication skills, then you are not an A-team player, right? Because for a partnership to thrive, you need to have communication skills. Now, if you were to go and show up on a netball A-team and say, well, I'm not willing to learn the skills of this game, why should I have to go and learn how to play netball? Why can't I just pitch up and just do whatever? You'd be like, well, it doesn't really work that way. And to me, it's the same thing in relationship. If you want an A-team kind of a partnership, you need to find an A-team player. So I call that, it's like conscious behavior that and I mean, the thing that it blows my mind is that people will be together for 15 years and complain about the fact that they don't have someone who communicates, and yet in 15 years hasn't bothered to learn how to communicate effectively, or
Can I ask something, Shelley? Just, if you've taken the time to be that A-team player, so you do really communicate effectively, but whenever you do communicate effectively, you get an answer like, oh, don't be, just leave it. Or we're not talking about this. Typical D-team player behavior. That also happens. So,
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not to say that if you've gone and done the work, that
yes, and this is exactly the point, isn't it? Is that you could have an A-team player over here and a D-team player over here. All right.
Very frustrating.
Yes, and what then needs to happen is that there needs to be this communication needs to explain and to inspire and help the other person to understand why our team is never going to, the ways in which we could really excel and thrive if we learned to communicate better with each other, for example. So there's.
Do you find do you find that, you know, in some instances, I might be strong in communication, but I've got a partner, even if they try, that it's not their greatest skill. So they're not very good at it. But then there's other partnership abilities that they're very strong at, but it's not my thing. And how do you sort of balance that? Because saying that, listen, if we're not both strong on every level in terms of partnering abilities.
Yes, no, I hear you. Yeah, okay, so sort of realistic expectations in a way. So, you know, I would say that first of all, your expectations of yourself. So, you know, if you know that you're a C team player, you're not really invested, you're not really that committed, you don't really have skills, you know, proper relationship skills or conflict management skills, you've never read much about it, you've never thought much about it, you know, then you can't be upset when you have a C team kind of a partnership. You know, if you're a C team player, you can't then be upset when your partner isn't showing up. But I would say, as you say, that you can be strong in some things and weaker in others, and that's where it's actually can work really well, is because you complement each other well. So you can say, for example, I know I'm not the best communicator and I really struggle. I have the intention and I'm trying really hard, but I'm not always able to express, you know, myself. What's in my head doesn't necessarily come out well. So then you negotiate that. So I would then say, well, what would you need? How can we communicate in a way so that we can figure each other out better, so that we can move forward? Do you prefer to write a letter? Would you prefer for us to, you know, put something down on paper and then to talk about it? Like, find a format that works for the two of you. So that, because if you think about it, you know, if it's a partnership for life, there are going to be zillions of things that need to be discussed, that need to be solved, that you need to overcome. There's going to be challenges every step of the way, external challenges that come from, you know, whether you lose a job, someone dies, whatever. There's all sorts of challenges that can come externally, and then there can be challenges that happen internally. So the internal challenges could be that, you know, if I'm grieving, or if I'm sad, or if I'm really not feeling well, it's happening inside me, but I need to be able to articulate that. So there's going to be challenges always. So if this intention and commitment, that we're invested and we're committed to make it work, then we will find ways to do it. And sometimes I will take the lead, and sometimes you will take the lead, and we will learn where I am weak and where you are strong. And we sort of lean on each other that way. So you lean in.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you saying is that actually, to get to that place, whether you're very strong or not that strong in an area of a partnering ability, is that if you have an openness and a willingness and an acceptance as a general rule, and you're willing to, for instance, grow and learn, you're willing to share what you can, you're willing to be open to exploring how we could, instead of just shutting down and not being available and not being open, but I'm a C team player, okay, and I'm also not available to learn and grow, or to change, or to see how I can meet you if I can't show up in the way that an A team player would. So it's more about that intention than it is about, do you really have the skill?
Because
but it's about what is your intention.
Yeah, so let's say someone doesn't. Well, what's going to happen then is the partnership is going to be heavily challenged and start to collapse, which is when people end up coming to see me, couples in conflict, they come and see me, okay, or another therapist, whoever they go to, all right? So at some point, the relationship implodes because the players are not willing to take a look at themselves and what they need to learn and what they need to do differently. So at some point, the relationship implodes, and often it's only when it's way too late, and the respect has then gone. You've lost respect for your partner because you've asked, you've pleaded, please come, please learn, please help, and eventually then sometimes, as what you spoke of earlier, which is that emotional divorce, which is that you then lose interest in being a player to this person, in being a partner to this person.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what happens when we're not open and willing and accepting and reasonable when we are in partnership.
Absolutely, exactly. And so it's really helpful, so one of the things around, say, partnering ability, for example, is being trustworthy. You cannot be in a partnership if you are not trustworthy. If I cannot, so trust will show up in the us space, okay? So if someone says there's a trust issue in our relationship, great. If there's a trust issue in the relationship, then within the individuals, there's a trustworthiness problem. Who has, where is there a integrity issue? Where is there been a breach where I've committed to something and haven't followed through? So I'm not trustworthy. So if everything comes down to the individuals, that's why I say relationships are fairly simple. It's the people that make them complicated.
Well, thanks for that, Shelley.
Well, and this is why I say that I've applied it to my own life, because if, for example, if something is showing up in the us space in my relationship, I immediately go, what do I need to do? How can I take responsibility? What is my share and my contribution towards the problem that's showing up over here? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense.
Okay. So for some reason, again, the last two aren't coming up, but it's fine. There's another slide that will get there. Okay. So this was, as I said to you, these are the slides that I was going to share, I've already done. So self-knowledge within me, so understanding myself within me and matching myself well with someone who's a good combination with me will show up as compatibility between us. So there is no such thing as a good or bad partner. You are just a better or worse match. Okay. And for example, when you are looking for a match, if you know you want to have someone who can communicate effectively because you want to create an A-team kind of a partnership, then you need to find someone who is an A-team kind of a player, who has those skills or who is open to learning those kinds of skills, if that's a priority for you. Okay, here's my intimacy one. All right. So if you are looking, intimacy, so vulnerability within me shows up as intimacy between us. So I'll just say a little bit more about that. Okay, so intimacy, when we talk about intimacy, many people think of intimacy as physical intimacy. It's the first thing that comes to mind, okay? And yes, physical intimacy is an aspect of intimacy, but intimacy is so much more than that. It's also emotional intimacy. So emotional intimacy is my willingness to be vulnerable, to say, I got it wrong. I made a mistake. I don't know. Perhaps you're right. I'm so sorry. It's about me being open and willing to be wrong and to learning and to sharing what I think and feel, even if it puts me in a position of vulnerability.
Like my shame story.
Yes.
The things that I wouldn't tell anyone but my closest friend, and then I hope they'll say, oh, that could have happened to me too, and cover that vulnerability and not expose you. But that kind of vulnerability. Yeah.
So we need to be able to peel the layers. When we show up in a relationship, what tends to happen is that with time And when you feel safe, you reveal those layers of the onion get revealed, and you really are, it takes courage, you know, to be able to share your heart space, what you truly think and feel about things, and to express yourself. That's emotional intimacy. Intellectual intimacy is about feeling safe to share what you think and have an opinion that's different, so we can agree to disagree. So for example, I know that there's couples where if one disagrees with the other one almost like attacks them until they convince them you're wrong. What you think is wrong. It's inaccurate. You know, it doesn't make sense. You're just stupid for thinking that, sort of thing.
Well, I mean, try on just rolling your eyes at someone.
Yes. So exactly. So it's about, so the reason you can see this vulnerability piece is that if I'm going to share from the bottom of my heart what my journey in life, what I think and feel about the world around me and my experience of the world around me, and sometimes my opinions are forming, sometimes it's new, you know, I don't know what I think yet, and I'm just looking for a sounding board. I just want to share what I think. I don't need you to respond. I don't need you to fix it. I don't need you to give me your opinion. I'm just sort of sharing. And if I am unable to do that, if I don't feel safe to do that because someone's going to be, oh, don't be ridiculous. That's terrible. What a stupid thing to say, or, you know, to shut you down or to belittle you or to make you feel small, you know, then there's no intellectual intimacy either. So then you stop sharing, you stop talking, you stop exposing yourself, you stop being who you are, and you keep those very personal parts for other people. You know, for the people that won't shut you down. And this is intimacy, and spiritual intimacy is almost like a combination of all three, is that the vehicle then becomes the relationship, this intimacy that we share allows me to feel safe in the world. It's the vehicle where it's very sacred, like our space together is very sacred. I honor who you are deeply, and you honor who I am deeply. And I would never, ever do or say anything that I thought would ever hurt you in any way. And the other person would know that if you said something that hurt me, that it would purely be through error. That it would never come because I know you're trying to get to me or hurt me in any way, you know, because I know deeply that you have my best interests at heart.
Can I ask a question, Shelley, because I know we've got some people in the audience that are, you know, very, you know, they almost feel that if they have knowledge about something and someone is talking a lot of nonsense, they are sharing opinions as if it's truths, but it's not actually true, or it might not be my truth.
Correct, yeah.
Then, you know, they almost feel like they're giving a part of themselves away by keeping quiet. But in not wanting to offend that person or you know, say, oh, don't be silly, because you are really being silly. That's how I feel right now. What would be your advice to sort of stay true to who you are, but also allow that person to believe or to view things from the, yep. Do you get what I'm saying?
No, so I totally get what you're saying. Okay, so I would, so there's a few things. These would be like sort of relationship skills. Okay, so you listen, you want to listen, pay attention, be quiet, allow that person to speak and to finish and to express themselves fully. Okay, and you go into it. You go into it with an investigator kind of a mindset. Not I know the answer, I'm right, you're wrong, and I'm just going to wait for the pause so that I can show you where you're wrong, okay? So in that moment, you think to yourself, okay, we've got a different perspective here, a different point of view. It seems very different to mine. Let me be open here for a moment. Let me try to understand it or see it through that person's eyes. So So I'm going to listen. I'm going to ask questions. So I'm going to ask questions. Why do you think what you think? You know, tell me more. And then I might summarize and I say, so are you saying X, Y, and Z? Is that what you're saying? Okay, all right. And then you can validate it and you can say, so I can understand why you would think that. That makes sense. But I must share that from my perspective, I see it totally differently. So we might have to agree to disagree. And if you're happy to, I'm happy to share how I think and feel and why I think and feel what I do. But, you know, we just have different perspectives on this and different points of view. And that's okay. We can hold different points of view. We don't have to agree on this.
That's great, Shelley. Thank you. Thanks for just giving a little bit of, you know, your wisdom there, because like I say, it could be a feeling that, you know, in order to be in a relationship, I have to give myself up. And I know that's not what you are saying, but this now really is helpful in understanding how to stay true to me, but also be in the relationship.
Yeah.
And allow someone else to be different, you know, to allow them to be their own person. Yeah.
You know, everyone has their version of their eccentricity, their slightly quirky thing, you know. So some people will believe, you know, really, I mean, it could be vast and different. And I'm not even going to say point anything because it might appear like I'm judging. I'm not. I'm just giving the example that, let's say you believe in pink elephants live in the sky. I mean, if that's what you think and believe, I don't need to say you're stark raving mad. Okay. And it irritates me when you say that, so stop saying it. You know, it's just, if that person wants to believe that, how does having the pink elephants in the sky, and if you believe that, that's cool, that's different. Wow, I didn't realize you thought that. So how does, you know, where does that fit in? What does having that belief do? How does it make a difference to you? What's great about that for you? And that person could say, you know, when I was little, my granny said pink elephants existed and I've always held on to that and whatever. Like, who cares why they think what they think? If it's important to your partner, let them have that.
Thanks for that. It's so valuable and freeing to just realize, you know, that I don't have to give myself up in order for you to exist too. And you can have vastly different ideas about things that, you know, I have very strong opinions about, and that's also okay. And we can exist as two individuals. We don't have to be enmeshed in this.
Exactly. And if it's something that matters to you so much that you need your partner to believe or to agree with you, right? Then it's a non-negotiable for you. Then it's a compatibility issue. So
it's a deal breaker.
It's a deal breaker. If I need my partner to believe in pink elephants in the sky, then I should have known that before I went into the relationship and found someone that's also equally happy to believe that.
Yes, very, very important. Thanks, Shelley.
Okay.
Yeah. So like you said, I guess decide which things are so important to you, whether it be views or beliefs or opinions or, you know, behavior that you're not willing to negotiate on, and the rest, be soft about it, because
the rest
that's
is
where
open
you
to negotiation.
Celebrate. Yes. Yes.
And that's why you need to have non-negotiables when you go in, because everything else is negotiable.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks.
Okay. All right. So I've already shared about this. So if you're wanting a partnership, you really need to take ownership for your own partnering ability. Okay. And then so the next slide, if it was to unfreeze, oh, there we go. Okay. So this is what I shared with you about the A-team player and wanting an A-team partnership. All right. So I've said enough about that. So the next slide that I'm going to talk you through is this idea that love evolves. Okay. So you know, in that in this space, in this us space, all right? In this us space, it starts out in the very early days as what I call, so someone is joining us now for the last bit. So in the very early days,
I think someone fell off and then joined again.
Rejoined,
Shelley.
okay,
Yeah,
no, that's
yeah.
fine.
Yes.
So when we first meet someone and there's this incredible chemistry, it's what's known as, it's like I'm infatuated with you. It's fatuous love or erotic love, okay? So it's full of passion and infatuation, and you can't stop thinking about that person, and you have a physiological response. Your dopamine levels go through all the natural neurochemicals that give you a high, your natural chemicals that give you a high, serotonin and dopamine, oxytocin, they all go through the roof. So it's no wonder that this coming together is such an exciting time for a new couple, okay? And then what starts to happen is we fall in love, all right? And this is romantic love. So romantic love is that point where, we sort of make the decision, right? This is my person. I want to be with this person for the rest of my life. I know for sure that we're a good match, and this is where we make the decision that we want to be with each other, indefinitely. And then what happens is, at some point, and I would say there's no specific time frame of when this happens, but it happens, is that there's going to be a point where your relationship is going to require that you transform or transcend yourself. So I call it transcendent love. And there's a Greek term. So it's, I don't know how you would pronounce it. It's agape or agape. It's a Greek term.
Yes.
So it's about love that comes from the soul. And there's also a Sanskrit word, bodhicitta, which is the, the Sanskrit word, which means the same kind of thing, which is enlightened heart mind. Okay, so it's the vow, it's when we cherish the other's welfare as our own. It's where we encourage, challenge, and inspire each other to become the best version of yourself. So let me tell you what happens is that you're in love, there's a certain point where your relationship is potentially going to crumble or implode, okay? Now, either the relationship will implode because there's a compatibility issue, in which case, if you're incompatible, it's not worth staying together, because then you aren't able to be yourself in this partnership. I see. Sorry, there's someone who's not on, who needs to be muted. If I could just ask you all to, oh, there, I found the person, I think. Okay, I'm going to go back up. All right. So at some point in the relationship, this is where the relationship stops working. And essentially, each person needs to transcend past themselves or transform. So transformational love transforms the individual. And if the individual isn't willing to transform, it never moves from romantic love to transcendent love. It's when it's in romantic love, if it's not open to transforming you, if the vehicle of the relationship, if you are not willing to transform or transcend yourself for the sake of cherishing each other and the welfare of each other, that's when relationships often end, is that you get stuck because I don't want to, as you said, Lily, for example, I refuse to learn to communicate. I'm a D team player and I'm proud to be a D team player. And if you don't like it, then you can leave. And so the person leaves.
That's a good analogy to use, because that's exactly where you see that unwillingness to transcend. And the opposite of that would actually be to say, I'm going to lean into vulnerability and transcend my own ego for the sake of the relationship.
Yes,
and say that I am a D player and I'm not very good at this, and I'm open to grow and learn.
Exactly.
That is rising past, your little small self that wants to just protect itself and feel safe. You need to risk. You need to risk your own safety to actually grow and learn for the sake of the relationship.
Absolutely, for the thriving of the relationship, which you would do and you would be willing to do if you know that we're compatible and we are really beautiful together and we are an incredible partnership. I'm willing to transform myself and it becomes transformational love, transcendent love. So those are the only really English words that I can find for it. We don't really necessarily have the vocabulary in our language. That's why I introduced these other terms. But it really is. So for me, my clue, when a couple comes to see me, they're either going to make the leap from romantic love to transcendent love, or it's going to implode here because one or both are not willing to do the work, basically.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Maybe we can just call it dangerous love. Because it's you having to move into a territory where you're not just safe and you're not just protected and you're not just doing your own thing. And you have to break down the walls and be willing to step past yourself. And all of that is dangerous. It feels like to the small self,
absolutely,
which says, what are you dangerous doing?
Yes,
exactly. If this person turns around and walks away, you'd be shattered after you have broken down these walls and been vulnerable. It's a different kind of a relationship.
Absolutely. And so that's the evolution that I see that happens with couples. And the last thing that I'd like to share, I'm going to leave it to you, Lily. We're at a juncture now where we can have a natural closing and we can open for questions and have conversation. Or I have one last slide, which is really about how to navigate blended families. So if you have divorced people coming together and blending families, a format that might be useful for people.
Shelley, I wonder if we should open up and see if there's any questions.
That's a good idea.
And if there isn't any questions, please share that part, because I know that we've got a lot of people that are divorced and that would actually benefit from that slide. So if there's any questions at this point, so you can just unmute yourself.
Great, thank you. And so please, I'm opening the floor to you all. Hopefully you've been there. We don't know. You're all anonymous and you're all on mute.
Yeah, we're just talking to one another. Hey,
exactly, we've had a fabulous time.
Yeah, so if there's any questions, you can just unmute yourself, ask your question, and Shelley will answer. And yes, feel free to do that.
Any thoughts, any disagreements? I'm also open to, I'd love to hear if you think that, you have a difference of opinion and say, no, I don't think that that's how it works. And this is why. So please feel free to take the floor.
Shelley, if there's no one that wants to speak up, I want to invite you guys to please send me, some feedback, some questions that you have. And you can also remember Yeah.
I was going to say, perhaps we can, if people don't feel comfortable to ask, to type it in the chat. That would be a good thing we can do. And then I can go through, I wish I'd said that in the beginning. So please feel free to type your questions in the chat, and then I will.
Yeah, go to where
yes,
your
I hear a voice.
Is intimacy capable of shifting the relationship on the scale of independent versus what was the terminology of independent versus
versus codependence?
Yeah. Can that is that a sliding scale? Does that shift with intimacy? Would intimacy bring it more to the center?
Yeah, I mean it's a great question. You know, these three things will be present in all relationships. So so the compatibility, the partnership, and the intimacy will be present regardless of which territory you're in. But I think that the willingness, the vulnerability piece, so particularly with avoidance, you know, the people that are avoiding intimacy, their biggest challenge is going to be the experience of vulnerability, because that's what when you're independent, you don't get you don't necessarily want to feel the vulnerability, you know. So so I would say probably your capacity for intimacy and your willingness to be vulnerable is probably very much very weighted on in the territory of love, and could present as a challenge, or almost define the greatest challenge for the other two areas. Does that answer the question?
It does. Thanks.
Pleasure.
Great. Is there anyone else? You can also go at the top. You'll see that there's mute, stop video, share content, participants, and more. And if you go into more, you'll see there's chats, and you can type there your question. Otherwise, I'd like to leave the floor open for a little bit still, and just to ask if anyone wants to come in and just ask a question.
Okay. So I might go back to sharing my slide and just do the last one then.
Yes, I wanted to say, please remember that, you know, you can always afterwards also make contact with Shelley if you feel that anything has spoken to you deeply and you'd like to explore more of that. You know, you can sort of set up a session with her and then also go into the detail of the question that you have.
Okay, great. So the last thing that I thought would be useful to share is something that I see quite a lot with my couples in conflict, and that is when you're navigating two sets of families that are now trying to blend in one. Okay. So this is the format that I use. So the A team is you and your partner. All right, that's the A team. We've discussed what the A team, those are the two, that they are the nucleus of the family. All right. Now, the next team is the B team. Now, the B team are your dependents. So your dependents would be your children, okay, and anyone else that you look after. So it could be a parent that stays at home. It could be, so for example, if I have got two children and my partner has, say, one child and two parents that he looks after, okay, those are his dependents. That's the B team, all right? The C team are all your extended family, so all the everyone else plus your exes, so including your ex partners. So what happens is, so I'm just reading a question. Okay, I'll go to the questions at the end. Sorry, I'm going to go back. I'll go to the questions at the end. So what we've got here, so I'm going to give you a live example of a couple that I'm working with. Okay, and this is where it gets complicated, is that often what happens is the ex will have a lot to say about how they want the children and what the new partner can and can't do, and how the new relationship will and won't work. And the C team often tries to dictate what's going to happen in the A team. All right. So what needs to happen is that the A team need to get on board with each other about, and the way that I describe it is that I say, in this house, we. Okay. So in this house, these are our rules, our policies, our procedures about bedtime, about eating, about healthy eating, about exercise. These are our roles and procedures about screen time, about playing Xbox, how much Xbox. Those are our rules that we decide in this house and under this roof. And those rules have to apply to all the dependents, to all the children. So you can't have my children have one set of rules and your children have your set of rules, because what you're then establishing is that the A team is over here. You've got two sets of A teams. The A teams are the parents and their children. The A team is not the parents and their children. The A team is the couple who then decides how we together. This is where you need the communication skills to be able to say, how are we going to handle these things? I've got two littlies, you've got two teenagers, and we need to decide together, so how are we going to make this work? What are we going to do about homework? What are we going to do about pocket money? Who gets what? How much? And how do we deal with conflict in the home? And if they're going to fight with each other, so the two of you need to decide what your rules are for this house. And the children learn very quickly that this is how it works in this house. And then when the children go to their other parent, that other parent has their own rules about how things work in their house. Because what I see a lot of in blended families is that there's this confusion that the exes seem to have a lot of say about what's going to happen in this A team. And you'll have one person being pulled and stretched in this direction, and another person being pulled and stretched in this direction. And the A team players are getting pulled apart by the dictation of the C team, or even the B team, where the children are saying, well, I will and won't do, and what I will and won't do. And it's not for the B team and the C team to decide how and what it works. It's for the A team to join together, to stand as a unity. It's called a union for a reason. It's a unity, and together the A team decides how it's going to be. And they need to be clear to the exes and the extended family. So the parents, thank you for your opinion. I appreciate your input. However, we've decided we're going to do it this way. Because the extended family often have a lot to say, and it tends to really pull this new forming team apart. When you're a new team, when you're a new developing A team, and it's just you and your partner, and there's no children, and there's no exes, and there's no, drama happening with all the exes. It's when you don't have that, it's already hard enough. So when you're joining together and you've got all these additional people with strong opinions about how it ought to be and what should be happening and what shouldn't be happening, so the ex will. So for example, one small thing, if the two of you decide, right, so are we going to, the children going to all go to the same school? How are we going to do this? Are they going to stay at their schools? What is our philosophy and policy around private schools, public schools? What are our philosophies around drinking and alcohol, are they allowed to drink when they're older, or do they have to younger, or do they have to wait till they're 18? All of that needs to be decided by these two people, and that needs to apply to everyone that lives under that roof. And the more that these two people can collaborate and work, it's collaborate and cooperate and work together as a team, the clearer it gets for everybody else that it's a partnership, that it's a proper union. Any questions, Lily, about this?
It actually makes a lot of things very clear, apart from the fact that blended families are extremely complicated.
Exactly.
It just reminds me again of how complicated it is. And
how it can be, it can become.
Yes, it can. And I've seen people ripped apart by this. They get together, they marry, and they divorce because there are two A teams in one family. And
Correct.
one couple of, my rules apply to my children and your rules apply to your children. So my children are allowed to drink, but your children are not allowed to drink because you don't like that.
Correct.
And then, there's all kinds of other things that become a problem. But the first time that you explained this to me, it just made a world of difference to my understanding of how it could be and why that union is so very, very important. Because without it, the moment you move outside of that union, that moment you've decided that the relationship is already over. You haven't divorced yet, but you're well on your way.
Yes.
Because, whether you have an emotional divorce at some point or whether you physically divorce at some point, it's going to break apart because that tearing is just too much for the relationship to take. So you can pull a piece of cloth or fabric, but at some point, if you stretch it too far, it's going to rip. So do you want to take that chance? Because that is what you're doing when you have two A teams, or
Exactly.
when you allow the C team to become part of the A team.
Correct.
It puts that tension on that piece of fabric. And instead of doing that, choosing just to be in that partnership from the beginning, I think is so crucial and so important. And it's so obvious when you look at this.
And the other thing about that, Lily, even if these aren't any dependents, if you think about this as the A team, and then you get that your extended family, how often does the extended family step in and say, you will do this and you won't do this and you will put your children in this place and you're not going to do this? The mom and the dad have all sorts of ideas about what will and won't happen for the A team, okay? And I just find it extraordinary that the A team are getting pulled and pushed and dragged, and they end up fighting so much between each other because of a C team making a decision about something, and that's why I say the C team is welcome to share their opinions, but ultimately the two people, the longevity lies with the two people in this nucleus that are going to make it work and to be a partnership and to pull together and to be able to navigate their way through all the different opinions that people are going to have in the world, which is why you really need to have that willingness to be open and vulnerable and share what you think and feel in a delicate way, because you might not like what the C team has to say on your partner's side, and you need to be able to discuss it, and the person needs to be willing to hear it and say, I can see why that would be a problem for you. I'm going to push back. Don't worry, I'll put my dad in his place next time he says anything that's hurtful to you.
That makes a lot of sense. I know that there's complicated situations, where, for instance, I feel that if I put my foot down with my ex, then he will, do something in terms of the kids that will hurt me back. He will talk to them about me in a derogatory way, or for instance, next time I want to go and pick up the kids, they won't be available to me because there's games being played, because I don't want to do things on his term anymore, for instance.
Yes.
And then I end up making just choices. When he snaps his fingers, I already say, okay, sure, let's do that with the kids this weekend, without even consulting my partner.
Yes, exactly.
And then my husband finds out later that I have already agreed to whatever my ex-husband wanted,
Yes.
because he manipulates me with the children. So it becomes extremely difficult. And I think that is where the sessions with you come in, to go and explore those things and to understand what to do, because it's not just, I understand now that this is important.
In principle,
but
yeah.
I also understand
absolutely.
that if
There's
it
many
goes wrong here, then
yes.
there's problems later.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing. I see there's 2 questions. So the one is there a possibility that the one circle be more towards the left or the right? Okay, so yes, in argument's sake, one person gives more than the other because they are more dependent than the other. Absolutely. So, yep, absolutely. And I think you spoke about it earlier, Lily, when you said that you have one person that's more sort of anxious and needy, and one person who's more avoidant and who pushes back a little bit. So you have that, one is sort of moving always forwards, and one is sort of trying to always move back and create space. So as the one moves forwards to try and get closer, the other one's trying to step back and create space. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's not always that you're both equally needy. You can have one that's super needy and one that pulls back, and then and that can also can create this dynamic, this power struggle. The other question was around how would you navigate entering into a relationship if your partner has children but you don't? Okay, so that's a great question. So the kinds of questions that I would want to understand is how can I, how can we support each other? Even sharing this idea of being the A team, is that we are a union and that we will need to decide, for example, going forward. So I would want to understand what's the current parenting plan. If you're entering into a relationship where there are children, you have to know that those children are going to be prioritized, that their well-being, and that is something that you are going to have to take into account going into that relationship. And I can't imagine that you would want it any other way. It's not that, so you're not there to become necessarily the children's mother or to take on the role of being their mother, but you are going to become a co-parent with your partner. So you would need to understand, if you're going to be around co-parenting when he's not there, for example, what are the policies and procedures, and how would he like to parent? So I would say, in a way, what the benefit of going into a relationship with someone who has children is that you really get to see and understand what their parenting style is, and whether whether you want to have children with them or not. You would have to have those kinds of conversations. You don't really say when you say how would you navigate the relationship, I'm not sure that it's necessarily problematic.
Yeah, I want to say, Shelley, that, going into a relationship, if I don't have children with someone who does,
yes,
there would have to be a conversation about who the A team is.
Yes.
It's been you and the kids up until now.
Absolutely.
And are you willing to change that? Because if you go into a relationship with someone and the words that they use is, it will never change, it's me and the kids, that's the way it is, because you might come and go, but they won't. You've got a red flag there, or you've got a serious conversation with Shelley coming your way to explore that. Because so it is very, you know, I would start there when you start getting serious to really say, is this something that we can renegotiate? And also bring the kids into that conversation. So say, listen, it's been us, and you know, we've been the A team up until now, but when we marry, then or you know, whatever serious step you take, then we become that unit that decides for your benefit and for all of our benefit how we will move forward. Because the resentment that comes with saying that it's okay if it's you and the children and I'll just come along, the resentment that builds up in that relationship is something that you can't tolerate after a while. And you never lose that feeling that you are the third wheel, you know,
Yes,
and that is not comfortable.
And I would say, you know, and if that person does have that, it's me and the children, well, then perhaps they're not ready to be in a partnership again, you know. As you're saying, you know, Lily, you have to really want to be in a partnership. And you know, the word partnership says it all. So if you're not open to being in a partnership and you are your sole purpose is to parent your children and you're not open and there's no space for anyone else, then you're not open and ready for partnership yet.
Well, can I ask the question, at what stage do you, as a responsible parent, make a decision to make an announcement like that? Because if you have someone else in your life every 2 weeks and they become that other person, then
Yes.
that could also be challenging to those children. So,
No,
I mean, it's a serious thing to say. It's a serious thing to convey. It's a serious thing to practice. So do you do that when you know you're going to get married one day? I mean, when? How do you determine that?
Yeah, I would say that when I wouldn't even introduce this person until it's in a very serious place, you know. Because as you say, for the children to just have people flitting in and flitting out, so that when it reaches a point when that person feels like they are invested and they are committed and they do want this partnership to work, then you will be introduced to the children and you will develop your own relationship with those children. But I wouldn't advise having people that you're just sort of casually dating in and out casually.
I'm just wondering about that conversation where you're saying, listen, going forward, we are the unit. Yes. And we are going to make choices, not us anymore.
Yeah. So Lily, I just want to clarify, are you asking me to expand on that? Because I agree with you.
I'm saying that, you know, I'm asking when is a good time to have that conversation and to actually go into that phase of the relationship where we are now a unit, because me and my children's been a unit up until now. Now I've got this new person in my life, but it's at a certain point we're ready to say, okay, we are a unit and we are going to make decisions, not us anymore. It's we. And if you want to know anything, it's not asking me anymore, it's asking us.
Okay, so
you know, when do you have that conversation with your children, and when do you make that decision that we are now a unit, me and my new partner?
You know, I wouldn't. To me, it's very much. There's no time frame. It's around feel, isn't it? It's like when it feels like the two of you are a unit, and then when it feels like your children are ready to meet your partner. And they've you know, and you've had your own private conversations with them to explain to them, you know, that I am wanting to meet someone. I do want to be in a relationship again one day. And when I do, so to talk to that, to prepare the children so that they know there will be a new person entering into their life at some point. And this new person is never going to replace your mommy or your daddy. But I want a partner. I want a partnership, and for me to be happy in my life, it's important to me to be in a partnership, and it's something that I really want, and it's very special. So I'm looking forward to finding that special person and introducing you to this person. So
would you say when you introduce that person to them, you are already that unit, and they need to consider this person?
Yeah, I would say you need to be pretty clear yourself already that that it's very serious between, that it's tipped past recreational dating,
Yeah, I want to say that Shelley, when someone's shown that they're willing to transcend themselves for that relationship, and they're doing that on a regular basis, I would think that is a good indication that you can trust them with your children as well.
Absolutely.
Because if they love you to the degree that they are willing to be in that place where they're open to grow and learn and to challenge themselves on things and be vulnerable and to consider you, then that's a good indication that they'll be good to the children and they'll make good decisions together with you for everybody's sake.
Absolutely. So Lily, I'm just going to share my details quickly for anyone who's interested. If they want to, they can just take a look at my mobile or my email address if anyone's interested to be in touch, or they can contact you. What would be really great before everyone heads off, I would really appreciate if we could perhaps just write in the chat, what is your one takeaway? What is your biggest takeaway from this last 2 hours that we've spent together? What are you perhaps aware of now that you weren't aware of 2 hours ago? I'd really appreciate some input or some feedback, please, before you all head off. And I know people will be heading off now. We've reached the end. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to join. And I appreciate your presence, and thank you, Lily, for having me. But please, if you can, write a note in the chat.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I just want to say that, it's always great to be in your presence. Thank you for allowing us into your world and into your space and sharing what, the wealth of information that you've gathered and the wisdom that you have. It's extremely valuable. And I know that all of us have benefited from that. And guys, thank you so much for leaving that comment for Shelley before you leave. I know that it's valuable for her as she can't see you, and I know she would have loved to see all your beautiful faces and to hear what you had to say tonight. And we would have loved to have your contributions. And since we can't do that here, thank you for just leaving that with her before you go. We really appreciate that. Yes, Shelley, thank you so much. It was very, very valuable. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Lily. So will you stay on a little bit? I'm going to stop recording now.
Yes.